The woman he never stopped loving. The secret affair that shattered Menglong's heart before the end. There are stories that the world only learns too late. Stories that lived quietly behind a smile, behind the soft eyes of a man who made millions believe in love. Menglong was that man. A name that carried warmth, elegance, and vulnerability. A soul who gave everything to the roles he played, yet kept the most fragile parts of himself hidden from the cameras. He was the dream that so many lived through. The gentle lover, the quiet hero, the one who could break your heart with a single look. But behind that light was a love story that no one saw coming. A story that, in the end, would leave him broken long before the world said goodbye. Those close to him say that Menglong was a man who loved with a rare kind of purity, the kind that doesn't fade with time, the kind that stays even when the person is gone. There was one woman, the woman he never stopped loving, the one whose name he never said in interviews, whose picture never appeared beside his, but whose presence lingered like a haunting melody through every scene he ever filmed. She was his muse, his undoing, and the echo that followed him long after their paths were forced apart. They met before the fame, when his dreams were still made of hope instead of headlines. She saw him not as the actor the world would later worship, but as the quiet boy with tired eyes and a heart too big for the world. They shared stolen nights of laughter, moments that lived in the in-between, between rehearsals, between rain, between breaths. To her, he was not Menglong the star, but the man who loved too deeply, who wrote songs that no one would hear, who confessed his fears in whispers. But life, as it often does, tore them apart. The industry demanded silence, perfection, control. Love, especially forbidden love, had no place in the polished world of fame. She was a dream that didn't fit into the script he was given. He chose his career, or maybe the world chose it for him. And she disappeared quietly, leaving behind nothing but the ghost of what could have been. For years, he carried that loss like a shadow. You could see it in his performances, the way his eyes lingered a little too long in heartbreak scenes, the way his voice trembled when he spoke about love. Fans called it talent, his friends called it truth. The truth that he was still acting out the goodbye he never truly recovered from. In the last interviews he gave, Menglong spoke of peace and reflection. He smiled softly, said he was grateful that he had learned to let go of things he couldn't change. But those who truly knew him knew what that meant. Letting go, for him, was never about forgetting. It was about learning to live with the emptiness. It was about forgiving a world that never gave him the space to love freely. They say he kept a box, a small wooden one, tucked away in his apartment. Inside were letters, notes, little fragments of a life once shared. A pressed flower from a long-ago walk. A photograph taken when he still looked at her the way the sunrise looks at the ocean. A necklace she had left behind. It was said that he would sometimes open it late at night when he couldn't sleep. No one knows what he read, but the silence that followed always spoke louder than words. As the years passed, he poured that love into his art. Every song, every role, every emotion became a tribute to the woman he could never have again. He lived for the moments he could feel her again, even if only through a script or melody. The fans saw beauty, he felt the ache. Every tear shed on screen was real. Every goodbye whispered into the camera carried her name. There were rumors, of course, rumors that he had moved on, that he had fallen in love again. That time had healed him. But those who stood close to him knew better. His heart, though open to the world, remained loyal to one person. He never stopped believing that love was eternal, even if it was lost in this life. He once told a friend, "Some people don't leave, they just live in a different silence." Those words now feel like a prophecy. In his final days, Menglong seemed quieter. The usual laughter, the boyish charm that once lit up every room, had softened into something gentler. He spent more time alone, surrounded by music, sketches, and memories. To those who loved him, it seemed like he was preparing to rest, though no one wanted to admit it. There was a peace in his sadness, a sense that he had made his peace with the things he could not change. When the news of his passing broke, the world fell silent. Fans flooded social media with tributes, candlelit images, and words that tried to make sense of a loss that felt too sudden, too unreal. But perhaps what broke people the most was not just the end of an artist's life, but the realization of what he carried all along, a love story that never had an ending, a heartbreak that became the masterpiece he never meant to create. It wasn't until later that the truth surfaced, quietly, respectfully, through those who had shared pieces of his private world. The letters in the box, the songs that were never released, the unfinished poem he had written just weeks before his death. The final line read, "I loved you enough to live with the silence." It was perhaps the most honest thing he ever wrote. His last film, still unreleased at the time, carried an uncanny resemblance to his real life. In it, he played a man who loved a woman he could never be with, bound by the choices that defined his world. When the trailer was finally released, fans couldn't help but notice the way his eyes glistened in the final scene. It didn't feel like acting. It felt like goodbye. For those who admired him, Menglong was more than a celebrity. He was a mirror to the human heart, a man who taught us that love could be both beautiful and devastating, that pain could coexist with grace. His death left a void, but his story left something eternal, the reminder that love, even when lost, can still be the most powerful thing we leave behind. People still visit the places he loved, the park where he used to walk at dawn, the small cafe where he was once spotted writing alone, the studio where he recorded his last song, a song that, according to one of his producers, was inspired by someone he could never forget. That song, unreleased yet endlessly whispered about, has become the symbol of his final confession. Those who listen to his interviews now can hear it, the ache beneath his laughter, the unspoken weight behind his words. "I think," he once said quietly, "some loves are meant to stay unfinished. That's what makes them beautiful." Maybe he knew, even then, that his story was one of those loves. Today, when fans speak of Menglong, they speak of light, of warmth, of the kind of soul that doesn't fade with fame. But they also speak of that woman, the unseen muse, the hidden memory. They wonder who she was, where she is now, whether she ever knew that she was loved so deeply. No one knows. Perhaps that's the way he wanted it. Some stories are not meant to be told. They're meant to be felt. And maybe that's why his life still lingers in the hearts of so many. Because Menglong didn't just act love, he lived it in all its unbearable beauty and heartbreaking silence. His story reminds us that sometimes the greatest love stories don't end in forever, they end in memory. And memory, when it's real, never dies. There are moments in a person's life that refuse to fade, no matter how much time has passed. For Menglong, that moment was her, the one who had left, yet never truly left. Even after fame found him, even after the lights of the industry swallowed his quiet world, her presence lived in every pause, every sigh, every role he poured his soul into. He never spoke her name again, but those who knew him swore they could still hear it echo through his silence. There was a time, years after their separation, when their paths almost crossed again. He had been filming abroad, lost in another character's heartbreak, when fate played its cruel trick. She was there in the same city, attending an art exhibition, her passion, her world. They didn't meet, but he saw her from afar just once, a fleeting glance across a crowded hall. She looked different, calmer, older, perhaps wiser, but her eyes were the same. For a moment, the years melted away. He froze, unable to move, watching her as if afraid she'd vanish if he blinked. And then she turned and their eyes met. That second was eternity. He didn't speak to her. He didn't have to. The silence between them said everything. The apology, the longing, the love that never found peace. When she left that night, he stayed behind, sitting alone in the empty hall until the lights went out. His assistant later said he didn't speak for the rest of the evening, just stared into nothing, as if trying to hold on to the memory before it dissolved again into time. That was the kind of love that defined him, the kind that demanded no return, no validation. It was quiet, but it consumed him. When people asked why he never married, he'd smile faintly and say, "Some hearts already belong somewhere." It sounded poetic, but behind that simplicity was a man who had already given everything once and could never give it again. In his final months, Menglong's work took a more emotional turn. He began writing again, poems, fragments of letters, song lyrics that no one else ever saw. His notebook, found beside his piano after his death, was filled with pieces that spoke of longing, forgiveness, and peace. One page, worn from being reopened countless times, simply read, "I hope you're happy. I hope you don't miss me anymore." The handwriting wavered, as if written through tears. Those closest to him remember how music became his refuge. At night, when the city slept, he would sit by the window and play soft, melancholic melodies that carried through the stillness. His neighbors said they'd sometimes hear faint humming, like someone singing to a memory. One of his old friends once visited him during one of those late nights. "You play like you're trying to talk to someone," the friend said. Yu smiled gently and replied, "Maybe she still listens." There was something hauntingly beautiful about his final weeks. It was as though he knew his story was reaching its last chapter. He began reconnecting with old friends, sending thoughtful messages, visiting places from his youth. To them, it felt like nostalgia. To him, it was farewell. One of his managers recalled how, on his last shoot, he lingered after filming Wrapped. He stood in front of the empty set, staring at the artificial sunset painted behind him. "Do you ever feel like you've already lived the best part of your life?" he asked quietly. When no one answered, he smiled and walked away. In his home, tucked between scripts and song sheets, was a letter never sent. It was addressed only as to you. The letter was short, fragile, and devastatingly honest. "I've loved you in every life I could imagine, and maybe in the next one, I'll love you better. If you ever think of me, remember not the pain, but the way we laughed, the way you looked at me when you thought I wasn't watching. That's where I still am. Always." The letter ended without a signature, but it didn't need one. The woman, when she later learned of his passing, didn't attend the public memorial. She came quietly, long after the candles had burned out and the fans had gone home. A few witnesses said they saw a woman dressed simply in white, kneeling by the flowers at his resting place, her hands trembling as she laid down a small wooden box. No one approached her and no one needed to. When she stood to leave, her eyes glistened with the kind of love that neither time nor distance could erase. In that silence, the story came full circle. After his death, that final song, the one inspired by her, was found unfinished. The melody, delicate yet haunting, faded halfway through. But the lyrics he left behind were enough to break hearts around the world. "If I could love you once more, I'd still choose the pain, because in pain you were still mine." It became his final gift to the world and to her. Fans called it his goodbye, but those who truly knew him said it was his confession. Time has moved on, but his story still lingers in the air like an unfinished song. People still speak his name with reverence, not just because of his talent, but because of his humanity. He taught millions that love isn't always about forever. Sometimes it's about the courage to feel deeply, even when it hurts. And perhaps that's why Menglong's legacy feels so alive, because it wasn't built on perfection, but on truth. The truth that love, in its purest form, doesn't need to be seen or spoken. It simply is. Even now, fans believe that somewhere in another lifetime he found her again, that the silence he left behind wasn't an ending, but a return. A quiet reunion written not in fame or words, but in eternity. Maybe he's still playing that piano, somewhere beyond the noise of this world. Maybe she's listening. Maybe, at last, the love that broke him has finally found peace. And if souls can meet again, you can almost imagine him turning, that same soft smile lighting his face, whispering the words he never got to say, "I never stopped loving you."